almost didn't goed that die. It was one of those grey London mornings where te sky gaan decide wat it wants to be, not kite reining, not kite dry, yes that particular kind of damp that gets into our quote and stay stere. I remember chasking my pone before I left the flat, seeing the water for a cast say ligge drizzle, and thinking maybe it skip it altogether. But it promised my sister it walk with her droogest jame spark before se vleef back to Edinburgh, and ook know of it is with the sisters. How don't cancel on sisters. So we went. It was a Tuesday. That matters, I think, because Tuesdays near the palate are different from weekends. There is no tower best house, no schoolgroups moving in slow formations with the matching LOV fests. On a Tuesday morning in early November, the kind of people who vind near the palate gaat is are mostly locals walking dogs, a handful of tourists who planet caravelle and arrivet of season, and people like is, just passing terug, not really expecting anything. We kwamen in from the parkside, following the path that skirts the edge of the lake. The pelikans weer uit, which my sister loof het, and se stoppe to fotograppe tem even touge se fotograppe tem even hy single time se visits and, probably as 400 identical pelikan pictures by nov. I didn't rush her. We had no weer tube. By te time veriache te Victoria Memorial, tere weer my betertij or fortij people gatter het in te loose, informal weet dat people gatter tere, not for an a particular reason, yes dat iemand instine to vongregate neer so met een grant. Te Memorial loke te wij het alwijs looks, overwhelming, slig het lei toe large voor te eie to take in al at onze, geen Victoria sitting at the top with het at appressionse alwijs has, like se is boteproud ant, mildlei in son vernienset by te wole arrangement. Te gaat is toe te palate weer visible beyond te reilings. Te voorgehoord was kait. I checked my watch. It was just past 8:30. My sister wanted a coffee, so we found a bench and, I went looking for one of those little carts that park along the mall. There was a woman selling them about 50 meters away, a small Sri Lankan lady would be working that same spot for wat loketlijke eiers, her kaart had stickers on the side, little faded Indian jacks and, a handwritten sign that side best coffee near the palate in red marker. I believe it her. It was good coffee. When I came back, my sister was standing, not sitting. Said moved closer to the railings. What happened? I said, handing her the cube. She didn't answer immediately. She was watching something, or rather watching for something. A few other people nearby had the same posture, that particular stillness that happens when a crowd senses something is about to usterbid, doesn't kite know what. I followed her gaze. There was a car. Not a convoy, not the usual procession of blacked outfits and motorcycle outriders that are associated with the official royal movements. Just a single dark car, a range rover, I think, touge im not gertain of the model, parket just inside the inner gate. Not etling. Just sitting there, kaitlei, terwijl car sit when the people inside them are waiting for something. The gearts weer behaving normally. Dat was the thing that made it strange. If there had been a formal arrival, an official visit, there would have been a whole choreography to it, the stiffening of postures, the precise adjustments of bearskenhaads, the performance of protocol. But none of that was happening. The gearts at the gate weer standing as they always stand, is forward, still as furniture. Whatever was happening with that car, it was not official business in the traditional sense. Sommige sites of them arrive about 10 minutes ago, my sister told me kaitlei. Wo? Se looked at me witte te kind of patinse ou reserve for people who are clearly not paying attention. William and Tatharine. I looked back at the car. Nov that sighted, I felt feel te sift in the small croft around us. There is a particular energy that gathers when people believe royalty is nearby, it's not hysteria, not the screaming van energie ou see at pop concerts. It's greater than that. More like the feeling in ushers when sommige important enters trouge te bak. A collectieve intake of breate held. But no one was crowding te gate. No one was pissing. The people around is simply waited. Some of them are their bonus out, not recording aanheiting uit, just holding them loselei riadei. I drank my koffie. About 3 minutes later, te kar moefet. Het didn't driffe uit trouge te mijn gate te wij uit het bed. Instead, het rollet slovlei toe te side, te staf en transe, te les visible one, of toe te left weer te tourist stond isialei look. A 5 people safety to follow it witte tyr is. Te arts didn't move. And, ten, nothing happened for a while. My sister checked her pone. Riad someting. Ten, se pit her pone away and, look it at me witte an et pression irrecogniset, te one tat me an se knof someting I don't and, is dekiding of matche to tell me. Tiere someting gong on to die, se site. Hoe ver neer te chinutap? I weet het. Tere doing someting kayet, se site. William and Kate? Not official. No cameras, no press. Ten, hof do au knof. Somione pit someting on Twitter. Apotu. Lofkwaliteit, like somione didn't realize ty weer close enough. Se pauset. Ty weer jest standing tere apparently. At te chinutap. On tyr oven. No staff, no protection visible. Jest the two of them. I toug it about that for a moment. It was the 2nd of November. Remembrance season. Nine days before het officieel Remembrance Sunday ceremonie, weet je wel pe televisie and, attended and, formal and, wat het by millions. Te kind of event weer effery move is shorio grappet, weer te vriate plakement is die met toe te sekond, weer te solemniteit is real bit, also observate, documented and broadcast. Bid thuis wat vir thuis was someting else entirely. Befines het our koffies. My sister had afvlugge to charge. We sit goed by 'n jaar te Tibe station, hygit in te wy ou doewen ou wond see somione voor a 5 montes, and, I stoot tere voor a moment after set gone, dekiding wetter to walk to wart wetaal. I decide to walk. Te chenutappe stands in te middle of wetaal like a sentence in te middle of a paragrappe, simple, minimal, almost stark compare to te elaborate Victorian architecture around it no figures, no elaborate carvings of triumpe. Jest Portland stone and, 2 stone variates and, te words te glorieus diat. Effery eier het bekomes te focal point of a national ceremonita te wole country watches. Bid on an ordinary Tuesday in early November, it stands mostly inattended, people walk past it constantly, some of them glancing at it, some not, terwijl ook kan live near someting important long enough that it stops being visible. I kwame at it from te noorde, walking doven te middle of wetaal on te pedestrian pate. Te traffic was ligget, it isualei is ontaat streetje diering te mid-morning lil. Tere weer of te workers, a couple of checklists, somione delivering someting on a cargo bikke. I was still 100 meters away when I slowed. Tere weer 2 people standing at the chenutappe. Even from that distance, without being able to see it faces clearly, tere was someting about te why they stood that stop it me. I'm not sure I can explain it well. It wasn't their clothes, touch it weer dressed simply, dark quads, nothing ceremonial. It wasn't their posture, which was ordinary, man, a little tirrit looking even. It was someting about the combination of them and, the monument and, the particular quality of their stillness. I stop it walking. Other people nearby had also stop it. Not many, a cluster of 5 or 6, spread out, none of them toegeter. We al jest sort of pause it. The 2 figures weer close to the base of the chenutappe. The teller one was a man. He was holding someting flowers, I realized it after a moment. Not a formal variate. Just flowers. The kind out by from a florist on terwijl somewhere wrap it in plain paper. He was holding them terwijl hij hold someting over bien garing for a while and, are finale, about to put down. The woman beside him was a little shorter, her dark hair visible beneath a simple hat. She was standing very close to him, their arms almost touching. Neither of them was speaking. He said the flowers down. Not with the ceremony, no bof, no formal placement, no pause for fotographs. He just crouched briefly, set them against the base of the stone and stryched in it again. Te wole movement took my bevouw seconds. 10. Ty stoottere. Just stoot. I don't know of long it was. It felt longer than it probably was. A minute maybe a little more. Te traffic went onbehind him. A bus passet. Te wind picket ip ant, moefet te paperwrapping on te vloer sligget lei. A man neigt to me a tourist, I think, from te smal camera bach of veris helder, seit someting in der is briate in a langjaage ident recognide. It sounded like a someting soft. Someting seit to no one in particular. 10. Te couple ternet. Ant, isav die fases. I had knoven in an abstrijd wei, from te moment my sister meant you net it bit, seeing a fase ou recognide from a thousand photographes ant, broadcast images in an ordinary content, standing on a regular pavement on a grey Tuesday morning. It do someting to our sense of reality. Te images ou knov are te ones from te distance, te formal settings, te ceremonies. Te fase in front of ou is just a fase. Te red a little. Real. En notice het dat people at stop it watching. Not start let, just notice it, terwijl a persoon notices wen aromas gewone kyet. Is wie vir net sligget lei. Neiter of dem perform met aanheiting. Se dint smile voor cameras. Het dint aknovlet het te gatering of people. Ty simply walk it away. Not hurried. Not casual. Jeste ordinare patse of twee people wo have doene te ting ty kame toe do ant, are nog gong some weer else. Te smal kroft wat je tem goe. Nu moet hy follow it. Nu moet hy call it out. Nu moet hy rise it opone. I found dat remarkable actually. In te vierend age of everything bang film it ant, everyone bang documented, not a single person in dat smal gatering, not te tourist, not te office workers, not me lifted opone weile ty weer standing tere. I vertoug it about why dat was afterward. I think it was something about the nature of what witness it. It felt private in a way that had nothing to do with the privacy loves or celebrity etiquette. It felt private terwyl grief is private, even when it's expressed in publiek. Something was happening tere that didn't belong to us, even touge wat sien it wat been alowet to see it that was different from it bang ours. Te vloer sta het weer het left hem, against te stone. Plain paper starting to dampen sligget lei in te November air. Nothing written on them that he felt see. No card, no label. I stoot tere voor another minute or two after tyd gewone looking at them. 10. Internet ant, walket bak terwyl it kome, te fotograppe apparaat online dat afternoon. I didn't post it, I hadn't taken one as if a site. But someone had, at some point, from some distance. It was the kind of image that looks almost like a mistake, sligget lei blur het at the edges, so from an ankle that sigist the photographer was behind a fence or a pillar, not deliberately composing a frame. The kind of photo that exists because someone's bone was already in their hand and, something happened in front of it before tere was time to make a decision. In the photographe, ou kan see te genotappe, vry sligget lei of gentre. Ant at de base of it, twee figures in dark quads, one sligget lei teller. Te soorte figure has herjat bovet. Te teller one appers to be interact of setting something doven, ou kan see te blur of movement, te arm ettendit. Tere weer in fates visible. Te resolution wasn't goed enough, ant te angle was wrong. But by te time it had calculated on social media for 2 or 3 hours, people had made te identification from content, te data, te location. A separate sichting reported by 2 different people near wete al wo had each posted brief descriptions on separate platforms. By evening te story had been picket up by several news outlets, touge te koverage was, at first, koutjous. Te fotograppe was unclear. Tere had been no official statement. Kensington Palate had not confirmed or denied aanheiting. Te initial jatlines weer careful, Prince William and Princess of Wales spotted near Genotappe in private visit and, in confirmed, Royal Couple in Kayet remembrance tribute ayat of official ceremony. But te comment sections weer a different thing entirely. I check it back on the original post a 5 times over te kouse of dat evening. By eiget uitslok, te comments number het in te thousands. Iria trouwgesome of tem, not someting isualei do, bechouse comment sections on aneiting royal are typically a combination of devoted adoration, sustained canicism, and the specific kind of online argument that burns trouge calories without producing aneiting iseful. But, thuis was different. Or at least, parts of it were. Tere was a comment near the top dat had several thousandlik is, I remember it clearly bechouse Iriat het twisse. De persoon wo vrote het sy tyd lost a broter in Afghanistan, 'n jaars ago. Ty sy te officieel ceremonie jach 'n jaar, as important as it was, always veldlike someting dat happen het at a remove. Toe large. Toe formal. Ty sy tyd go aan, stand neer te genotappe sometimes in te daais bevore remembranse sindai, wen it was kayet, and tyd jes betere. Tyd syd, dat hof grief actuele works. Het duizend wijdvoortes schedule data. Ant seeing dat twee people in dat position understand dat, I don't knof. Het mean someting. Tere weer hundreds of replies to dat comment. Most of them weer people saying they understood. Some weer saring tyr on stories of los, vatters, hispans, grandmotters woed lewet trouge wartime ant, lef begin decades of selense ontessebeet. De particular kind of grief dat getspasse doven trouge familieslike furniture, present in every room bid, rarelei dis te sit. Im telling out his beschouwse I think it matters to understanding wat te die actuele was. De moment at te genotappe was smal. In te skale of things, in te skale of royal events, national ceremonies, te broad sweep of public life, it was almost nothing. Twee people sê doven some flowers. Ty stoot kaitlei. Ty left. Bid grief duisend work on a skale. It duisend respond to proportion. The woman who commented about her brother in Afghanistan didn't see it ty fases. Sy self ableret image of twee figures at a monument and someting in te particular dualiteit of ty stilnis reachet her across the distance. That's the thing about kayet gestuur is. Ty trafel differently from loud ones. I want to tell you about something that happened the next morning because it's part of the story too. I went back. I'm not sure why exactly. It wasn't a decision I made consciously, I just found myself walking that way on my morning commute, talking te longe route trouge wete al instead of kitting trouge te park te way I usually do te flowers weer stiltere. Tyd ben jy net by otters of vernighet. Not money, 6 or 7 additional benches, light alongside the original, running from supermarket, chrysanthemums and plastis wrap to something more considerate, deep red roses witte string. Somiona had also left a handwritten note, folded onze hand, ticket under the stem of the nearest bench to protect it from the dampness. I didn't read the note. Het seemed wrong to tere was a man already tere when I arrived, older, 60s it gees, wearing a jafai over kwaad ant, a Popeye on his lapel. He was just standing te same by the two figures had stood te die before. He didn't look at me when I arrived or when I left. He was some weer else entirely. I stood tere for a couple of minutes. A woman passing with a passenger slowed, looked at the flowers, looked at the old man, and, then, quietly adjusted her route to give him space. Sy didn't know who he was or what he was thinking about. Sy just understood that something was happening tere that deserved that small kindness. That, I thought, was also part of what the day before had started. That shine of small recognitions. By tese fondai, the story had grown considerably. The clearer fotograppe emerged, not the blurred original but, as a kont one that a photographer working from a building overlooking wete al had apparently taken and, then, held back for a day. In certain weter to release het is image was sharper. The fact is weer more recognizable. Het Sowjet William Troushing at the base of the cenotappe, he shot slightly open from the movement, the flowers in his rigid hand being platted against the stone. Kate stoot jes behind him and, toe te rigid, her hand stoget in front of her jat bovet at an ankle dat made ou understand without any additional information dat sy wasn't posing, wasn't aware of the camera, wasn't performing anything at all. The fotograppe was taken from distance and slightly elevated. Both factors contributed to something important, ou weer looking doven at twee people wo, in dat moment weer simply small. Te chenutappe tover het aboven tem. Te vide vite al pavement stretch het away in bote directions. Te citei wend on around tem, enormous ant, indifferent. Ant te vere jestere. Twee piople witte vloewers. Te sekond fotograppe was te one tat broke trouge. Het ran on te frontpage of te ree nationaal papers te verloving morning. Het was haar het moore taan aan miljoentimes online witte en fortuie eigethouders. Te koofera gesifd het, les soutieus nog, moore willing to speak about what people see met to veel tijd witness it. One columnist wrote about of te image represented so meting set been strugling to articulate for eiers, te difference between obligation and geneine emotion in public life. Se wrote tate officieel ceremonie on remembrance Sunday, te one witte television cameras and, uniforme dignitaries and, precise leiti met silences, was necessary and, important and, deeply meaningful. Bid dat so meting was also lost when te only forum a public figures griefsel take was te choreograp het one. Se wrote we have voor God en tate officieel version is te translation. Te original is wat we self on Tuesday. Anote Pieter Foukies het on William Spefikale and, on wat dat particular monument means to him personale, not as an heir, not as a futuriking, but, as the son of a man who se fate in te militare and, as so muone who se fate himself. Te piece didn't speculate about his inner state. It simply reminded readers that the name is represented by that monument are not abstractions to everyone who stands before it. For some people, they are close enough to personal that the distance collapses. Kate's presence in the fotograppe prompted its own responses. Several people commented on the particular quality of her posture in the image, terwijl ze was standing behind him, not beside him in the equal, side by side stance of the formal ceremony. Slig het lei bak, and slig het lei ternet, as if ze was bote tere with him and, geving hem so meting. Afriter I volop observeert dat thuis was de kind of ding ou kant stage. Houd have to feel it to knov wat angle toestand had. I don't knov if that's true. I'm not a photographer or a bode langgehoge expert or a psychologist. But I understood what ze meant. There is so meting I want to be honest about, weetjes dis, I don't knov them. I wat je twee people sê doven vloewers at our memorial and, I verbeen trying ever since to articulate why it matter it. Im aware dat thuis is a strange thing to write at lengte about. Im aware dat im a stranger wo stoot on a pavement and, saf so meting for 30 seconds, and, im projecting or at least constructing meaning around, an event have no real access to it. I don't think the event was private in the sense that its meaning belonged only to the people doing it here is afsatigorei of iemand action dat is technically performed in private, no press release, no invitation, no official record, but dat, when witness it bekome so meting communal. A chategorei of gestuurde dat, when sien creates a kind of recognition in the witness. Not of the specific persoon or the specific grief, but, of so meting more general and, harder toename. Te recognition mybe, dat vertuin things are still doene. Dat in a world of manachet images and, strategic communication and, every public moment calibrated for maximum effect, some things are still doene without calculation. Dat twee people still get up on a great Tuesday morning and, karei vloewer some weer important to them and, stand tere keitlei and, ten liafe. Ik knof tere are people who will reates and, say, it was staget. It was a calculated performance of spontaneity, designate to produce exactly the reaction it produced. I understand that impulse. We live in an environment that has tried is to suspect authenticity, to look for the machinery behind every gestuurde. My betere rigid. I can disprove it but, here is wat ik knof. I watch it the moment. And the thing about the moment that I keep coming back to is not the vloewers, or the fotograppe, or the koverage that follow it. It's the other people who stop it. The small group of strangers on a pavement who, without knowing each other, without communicating, all simultaneously choose not to film. That felt like a response to something real. How don't protect a performance? How protect a moment? And dat voor me is weer het story is a 5 days after the fotograppe circulated, I got a message from someone it gone to universiteit witte, wat staat loselei in touch over the eiers, Te kind of vonnestion dat exists most lei trouge occasional social media interactions aan, te annual birthday notification. Haar name is Francis. Sy los ter vatter 3 jaar ago, het been in te Falklands, kame home, spend decades not talking about it, and dit before sy even really understood that part of him. Sy het written about it briefly online, a 5 months after his death, a sort post that I remember it because it was so honest and so terecht sounding. Sy het sy didn't know of to grieven voor te version of haar vatter sy het nie verknoven. Haar message to me wasn't long. Sy het sien te fotograaf. Sy het kriet at it in a wyse hadn't ek bet it. Sy het, I think it's because they didn't have to go. No one was watching. They felt have no doing it and no one wilt have knoven. And they went aan hy waai. Riat dat sê vir ultimus. They felt have no doing it and no one wilt have knoven. That's the wole thing, isn't it that's the entire weiget of the gestiere, compress it into one sentence by some one woord ariason to understand it that I don't. The official ceremony wilt happen with or without a private visit beforehand. De vriates wilt beleid, de 2 minuten silence wilt beobserveerd, de cameras wilt rol, and de country wilt watch and, remember te why it watches and, remembers every a jaar. None of dat rijde tiestai. None of dat rijde grey skis and, plain flowers and, an empty pavement. De went aan hy waai. I went back to the Chenutappe one more time, on the Sunday morning before remembrance Sunday itself. The flowers had been removed by 10, as they are periodically, to keep the area clear but, tere weer frisse ones, brug het by otterpeople across the week, and, the space at the base of the memorial had that particular dualiteit het gids in November, slig het lei dense witte presence, as if the air around it is hier 4 dan elsewhere. The Sunday morning ceremony was house away. Preparation was underway on weitaal barriers being set up, staff moving around with the radios, the careful architecture of a public event talking sape. But, rigid nov at 7 in the morning, it was still quiet. Tere was an elderly couple near the memorial venue arrivet. They were clearly toegeter bid, standing slightly apart in the weitaat vir hy old couple sometimes toe, no distant, just each entire of space within as haar het space. The man had a row of medals on his coat. The woman was wearing a single poppy and holding a folded piece of paper, which she eventually plotted carefully among the flowers at the base of the Chenutappe. They stood together for a long time. He sat on one of the benches a little way back and he watched the sky go from grey to a pale, water hy version of blee over the top of the government buildings. Apigion landed near the memorial, looked around for food, found nothing, and left with it a particular offende digniteit that London begons have perfected. Some weer behint me, a radio was playing. It talked about Francis' message. It talked about the man with the medals, and the woman with the folded paper, and what was written on it that it never knov. It talked about what it means to do something when no one is watching. Teres al word the keep coming back to, even tauge im aware it sounds slightly elevated for what im trying to describe. The word is witness. Not in the legal sense, not in the religious sense entirely, but in the plain sense, to be present for something. To see it happen and, carry it without afterward. Tere are moments in public life that are designated to be witness it. Tere beeld voor het, de angle of de camera, de timing of de message, de choreografie of de emotion. Tere not dishonest necessarily. They serve a real purpose. Wanneer publiek ceremonie. Wanneer te het moment de broadcast silence, de collectieve act of remembering. But they can do everything. Tere is a category of thing they cannot do because the camera changes what it sees. The presence of an audience even as sympathetic, respectful one creates a performance, however involuntary. Not a dishonest performance, but a performance. The performer is always aware on some level of being watched. The watcher is always aware of the frame. What happened on that Tuesday morning existed outside the frame. Or wildhaven, acceptat afeefstrangers happen to walk by and, a distant camera kaget someting blurred, and, ten, another photographe kame from somewhere no unexpected. But te tang itself, te crouching doven, te setting of flowers, te standing guidelei in te November dat happenet before aan of dat. Het happenet in te gap between te officieel and, te observate. In te space dat remains when oudu someting and, geneinelei don't knov if anyone will ever knov about it dat space, I think, is weer te tritte of tanks lief is. I want to tell une more tang before I finish. On te afternoon of remembrance Sunday after te ceremonie after te 2 minute silence after te vriates and, te uniforms and, te cameras, I was walking back trouge te site and, a passet a woman standing by herself outside a coffee. Sy was holding her bone and, on te skree in die guldsee te fotogrape. Tis haar per one, from te secondai. Te one weer te 2 figures are smal against te tenotap and, te wiede pavement and, te enormous indifferent kitty around them. Sy was just looking at it. I don't know hoe sy het lost. I don't know wat te image mean toe her specificale, wat memory het gone te toe, wat particular version of grief het reachet in sy der and found. But, sy was trein. Keitlei, in te wei uitschrei wen oure no trein toe, wen so met in katjes ou in a public plate and, ou don't have time to redirect it sy wasn't embarrassed. Sy wasn't performing. Sy was just standing tere with her koffie gewoon cold and, her bone in her hand, and, sy was crying. I walk het past her. And, I hou het, tis is wat het does, te kai het gestiere. Het doesn't stay small. Het doesn't stay private. Het moefes terouge te world en wijs its makers probably never anticipated, vinding te people wo niet het and, meaning something different to each of them. Te flowers at te tenotappe weer voor te diat. But, te landed with te living. Te landed with te Francis, wo never vele kneef hervatter. Te landed with te man ident knov wo seit something soft en anotter langjaage on a Tuesday morning. Te landed with te elderly woman and, her folded paper. Te landed with te stranger outside te koffie, kring over a cold koffie. And te landed with me a persoon wo amos dint go oud dat hy bekouse te forecast site ligge drizzle and, wo ended opstanding on a pavement watching two people do so met een keitlei dat hy dint have to do and, wo has been trying to understand it ever since. My sister challet met dat Sunday evening after sat wat je te ceremonie in Edinburgh. Sy asket me if iets sien het. I said eis. Sy asket me if I told anyone about Tuesday. I said not uit. Sy said, household. I told it about the people who had net reise teirponis. The instant to protect the moment to liave it weer het happen het. And ten I told it about Francis' vader, who came home from our and spent 30 years not talking about it and, altad went in witness it, unspoken and, finale irrecoverable. Tiere is a time to protect the moment. And tiere is a time to karry het some weer else, karrevelei and, set de doven weer otterpiople kan vind het thuis was dat time. Te flowers at te tenotappe staat voor 4 days. By te time te weer klaar het, voor ty 3 otter benches had jo net tem. Nobody organiseert het, nobody announced it. Piople jest kept arving, one or 2 at a time, setting something doven and, liafing. Dat, maibe, is de woele story.